Hi guys, and welcome back into Veteran State of Mind. I am going to begin by reading you a biography to set the table. I hate using that term. I just keep using it because I'm hearing it on American podcasts all the time about what we're doing on our podcast today, and to introduce our guest, Jonny Whitmore MBE, known to many as Shed. He was born in Hinckley, Leicestershire, and joined the Royal Corps of Signals, completing P Company early in his career. He deployed to Afghanistan with Signal Regiment and 2 Signal Regiment before returning to the UK to serve as a section commander at ATC Pirbright, training and leading recruits. He later completed the Special Communications course and joined 299 Signal Squadron, brackets Special Communications, providing global support to the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. Over a 21-year career, he finished his service as Squadron Sergeant Major of the Queen's Last Squadron, the final group of service personnel to swear allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Jonny was appointed a member of the British Empire for services to British foreign policy, while seconded as a diplomat to the FCDO, working at the intersection of defence, intelligence and diplomacy. Medically discharged with complex PTSD, he moved into trauma-informed veteran advocacy. Jonny now serves as Veterans Ambassador for Emerald Clinic, championing safe, stigma-free access to prescribed medicinal cannabis and pushing for more humane, evidence-based support for veterans. He is also the founder of the Campfire Collective, a veteran-led woodland initiative built around community, honesty, and reconnection after service. Jonny speaks openly about trauma, identity, and building a life of purpose with a focus on truth, service, and helping veterans find their way home. Jonny, good to have you on, mate. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Really appreciate you coming in today. There's a lot of stuff in there, obviously, for us to dive into. I'm especially interested in this idea of, to quote it verbatim, evidence-based support for veterans. I'm really looking forward to diving into that, because I feel like a lot of the times there's these preconceived notions about veterans and treatments for veterans and that kind of thing. And sometimes we can have evidence staring at us in the face for whatever the reason that we don't really want to come to grips to. But let's talk about your military career for a bit before we get into that. What drew you towards a career in the military in the first place?
Not a clue, to be honest with you. Absolutely not a clue. I've obviously, through treatment, spent a lot of time thinking about this. If you believe in that sort of thing, maybe it was my dharma. But from my background, my granddad was in the Royal Navy. He was on the landing craft at D-Day. I had an uncle that was, shout out to my uncle Ken, he was in the infantry. He was in the Royal Leicesters during sort of like the mad bad days in Northern Ireland. But that was really it. My parents were dead against me joining the army. I was going to join the army at 16, but they refused to sign the paperwork. So my dad has got absolutely zero do as you told in him. He's worked for himself for all of my life. So no real sort of military background. It's just the only thing I've ever wanted to do. Grew up, well, my dad's a restorer of antiques, arms and armor. So he's a gunsmith. I grew up in a pretty interesting household with sort of like bits of suits of armor and swords sort of coming in to be fixed and sent back out and things like that. One of my early memories was there's the Battle of Rorke's Drift from the film Zulu.
Oh yes, that's so fighting in this house, mate.
Yeah, so before that, the Battle of Isandlwana.
Yeah, well, we don't talk about that one so much.
Lieutenant Coghill and who took the colours across the river, and they won the VC for it. Well, his sword was up in the officers' mess. Right? You know about this?
No, go on, mate. Yeah.
And a couple of drunk subalterns one night decided to bend it tip to hilt because they'd been told that a good sword could bend tip to hilt. And that's how you know it's a good sword. And they did this and snapped the fucker halfway through. Sorry for swearing that.
Go ahead.
And
what you want.
And they'd been sent to try and get this fixed. And like my dad was one of the few sort of restorers around, and they yeah, one of my early memories is these two young officers standing in like my front room, getting absolutely sort of rifted by my dad for like breaking this piece of history. But my dad fixed it to the point where you could not tell that this sword had been broken straight down the middle. So, and my dad was completely self-taught. He originally worked in sort of the Jaguar factory, but that was his sort of passion. It was what he wanted to do. So he went and did that. So I think it could have been the sort of growing up with that sort of history sort of put me towards the military, but I don't know. It's just what only thing I wanted to do. So after my parents refused to sign the paperwork at 16, I did my A-levels, looked at sort of what was going on in the world. Obviously by then it was 2004 time. So Iraq had kicked off. I had sort of my A-levels. So one of the recruiters where I was at was Royal Signals. I looked at the trades that were available in the signals, and I picked area systems operator because I got my lorry license out of it. And I thought, well, when you get out of the army, you can always, that's always a good one. And they've taken that license off me now. I've got PTSD, so it was all for nothing. But yeah.
So what's an area systems operator? What does that role encompass?
So again, it's a trade that doesn't exist anymore now that they've all amalgamated. So essentially, how the communications work, network work, you have sort of like your trunk communications, which is the main branches of the network. So think about your cell phone towers, and then you had your radio systems operators, which were the ground operator network. So the guys in the Land Rovers that were feeding out and to the individual operators, the mobile phones. So I was on the trunk radio network feeding back the big trunk links. And I never actually really did that job. I got trained in it, and then just how it worked out in my units and things, and how the global war on terror worked. Really, the Royal Signals, depending on the units you ended up at, we never really ended up doing our jobs. We were so sort of spread about and bounced about. We ended up doing specialist roles and things like that. Yeah. So area systems operator didn't I changed trades, I think, about 4 times, and never really understood what my job was in the signals.
So let's talk about what were your first impressions of being in the army and stuff? Once you say, you didn't really know why you ended up there. Well, once you did it feel like home? Did you feel like you were in the right place?
Oh, I joined the Army Cadets. I lied about my age to join the Army Cadets. So in the Army Cadets, I had 2 dates of birth, which caused problems because I ended up going on courses before I was old enough to end up on courses with the cadets. So I ended up doing things too early, and then I got to go to Canada with the Army Cadets, but because my date of birth was wrong applying for it, I had to have given my passport with my real date of birth on it, which caused some problems. But yeah, so I'd already gone through the Army Cadets from sort of the age of 12 to 18 when I joined the army. So I was really I'd already done a lot. So I was really keen and green by the time I joined the army. So I kind of burnt out of the keen and green fairly early into my army career, which is something which will come apparent as we talk through my army career. But no, I loved it. I was instantly home. I was ready for it. Like, I remember saying when I was going through my I didn't really want to do my A-levels. I wanted to join the army at 16. Like I say, I was ready for it then. So, yeah, just doing my extra qualifications. I remember saying at like AS level, I just saying to my teachers, look, I'm just waiting to join the army. I just want to be in the army. Yeah.
So how did your first operational tour come around then? Do you deploy as a like a formed unit, or are you placed into, battalions with, say, the infantry and stuff? How does that work?
So my first tour was with 22 Signal Regiment, and that was, so my first unit was 3 Div down at Salisbury Plain, and I was with Treble 2 Signal Squadron. And then what happened was they formed campaign signal regiments to basically go out and support all the op herricks. But what they did was they formed the op herricks. They supported op herricks sort of slanted. So you had Op Herrick 8 and 9. So instead of going on Op Herrick 8 and Op Herrick 9, they covered 2 so that the comms would obviously be covered over the RIP, so you wouldn't have a thing. So 22 Signal Regiment was a regiment that was reformed. It was an old regiment that had been disbanded. It used to be based out in Germany. It was reformed at MOD Stafford. And Treble 2 moved up from 3 Div up there specifically just to deploy out. And I moved up with Treble 2. And yeah, I did my Lance Corporal's course at 3 Div just before I moved up there. So I'd done my first unit down at 3 Div without a tour. It was pretty much, that was the only place I really did my trade, which was just lots of exercise. It was pretty much like two weeks of every month on Salisbury Plain doing sort of classic trunk node, as we call it, exercises, and then the rest of the time I'm drinking in Salisbury sort of thing. It was like the old army, you know, when people talk about Germany and things like that. It was an experience of that. I enjoyed it. It was where I made sort of my oldest friends in the army, people I was him still friends with today. Like I was an usher at their wedding, they were ushers at my wedding. It was a great time. It really sort of experienced. It got to be sort of a basic private, no responsibilities and just beer tokens getting paid. And then sort of reality kicked in, do Lance Corporal's course, get posted, start going on tour sort of thing. But my first tour job, I was working in the Comsen was part of my job. And
what's the Comsen, sorry, mate?
It's basically a communication centre in Bastion, right? And I got told that was going to be my job. And I was like, this isn't what I joined the army to do, process messages all day. So I looked for any opportunity I could that wouldn't be my job. So I also got on a piece of kit called Pike, and that's a piece of spectrum analysis equipment. So essentially you set it up and you see the full radio spectrum. And the idea of that is so that, say that you're putting a new piece of communications equipment in, you put that up and you can see the full spectrum of everything transmitting, and you'll see where that's going to transmit, and you'll see if there's anything that's going to interfere with that. And that was quite good because with that I got to deploy out and do some pretty good jobs, and it kept me out of trouble really. Because by this point I was running out. I was getting my dad's lack of do as you're told, and I was running out of my green thing. One of my favourite things to do in the Comsen was because in Afghan they used to sell the 0 alcohol beer. So during the day when I was working the Comsen, I'd buy the 0 alcohol beer and walk around and answer Comsen calls because the officers had come to the front desk and asked for like, oh, my phone's not working or my computer won't work. And it's always something bone, like they haven't switched it on. It's literally like working an IT service desk, except you're hot and you're away from home and it's an officer that's speaking to you. So I'd always answer it with like a 0 alcohol beer, and they'd always have something to say about it, but there was nothing that they could do about it. And just things like that, just to wind people like officers up, so you can see why. So after that, they put me on night shift, like months of night shift, so that I couldn't do that. So I'd do anything I could to get out of Bastion and go and do things. So working on the Pike kit was good. I got to go out and work. I went to sort of like Sangin and Fob Rob and a few of the fobs when they were setting up kit. And when I went out to, I think it was when I was in Fob Robinson, I worked with the paras, a couple of snipers out there. Basically, I was in the HQ one night, and they were having a problem with dickers from a couple of the villages nearby. One was called PKK, I think, one of the villages, and basically, I heard one of their OCs saying about it, and I said, "Well, I've got this piece of kit that it came with like an ICOM scanner, but it was like a directional. You can basically pick up and ICOM them." And then they were trying to get 14 SIGs out to come and do some of get their GIMP mask on and figure out where they were. And I said, well, I'm not that, but I've got to try and find interference. I can do this. So maybe I could help you with that. So he phoned up and I said, but I'm going back to Bastion tomorrow. And in typical fat para officer, he went, no, you're not. Phoned up my OC and he went, I've got Lance Corporal so-and-so here. He's not coming back for a bit. And so I worked with them for a couple of days, just trying to find out where they were.
Right. So that was, let me see if I can wrap my infantry brain around this. Right. So, so when they're using the ICOM scanners, that creates like a signal, obviously, for them to do it. So by you using this equipment, you're essentially able to pinpoint the art. So if you could match as someone's on the ICOM talking, because obviously, presumably, someone like Sangin, there's a lot of interference, right? Because people have got phones and everything like that. But if you can almost match, and then by like kind of like deduction, be like, okay, this guy, we can hear this guy talking on the ICOM at this point. He's on this. It's got to be this guy. Is that how you're kind of narrowing it down? I feel like I have steam coming out my ears trying to understand all this wizardry that's going on here.
So, this was in Fob Rob, which wasn't. It was a bit further out, and it was specific. All I was trying to do was narrow it down to compounds for them.
Right.
So this was very ad hoc, and you'll see this as a pattern throughout my career. I've bluffed my case a lot, essentially. But no, I was trying to narrow it down to compounds. So they had sort of, with the ICOM scanner, they get frequencies that these guys are working on. And I had the big set of kit I could set up and see where these people are transmitting and go, right, that's that frequency. I could set my handset to that frequency. And with the, like a directional antenna, I could go, like, we basically do hot, cold, and get a bearing, straight line bearing on it, and basically do a resection.
Right.
Move around and go a resection and go, right, well, he's somewhere. So like, I basically made it up on the spot and it worked. But yeah. And it kept me out of Bastion for a while, winding up officers. So
brilliant. I just want to jump back a bit there. Like, did you have like not even sure the correct terminology, but like when you were growing up, were you kind of quite handy on the tech kind of side of things as well? Because I mean, you could have given me that kit you're talking about there. I never would have thought in a million years to have done that. Like, where did that intuition kind of come from?
I'm not sure. Probably desperation to stay out of Bastion, to be honest. I'm not sure. I'd done a course on that kit beforehand, and obviously being a operator, I'd done a few other courses and things. So it all kind of sort of comes together. You start learning about the electromagnetic spectrum and sort of how things work, and then on a resection, a little thing about bearings and map reading, it all just starts to come together, really.
Yeah. Or is it the old necessity is the mother of invention or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So like it was that first tour of yours then, how would you like when I'd not so much say looking back now many years later, but at the time were you disappointed with what you'd got out of it, you know, considering what you'd wanted to join the army for?
Yeah, I was. One thing that I will say, but definitely about that, and especially that time in Fob Robinson, because that was when I decided to go and do P Company. Was there because first of all, like it was working with 216, and I had good experience, which is our airborne signal squadron, right? Yeah. And so I got attached to go and work with some of the snipers from the paras. So I walked into it was first working with in this Sanger over in one of the sections where the US SF were working, and we'd taken over one of their Sangers. And I walked into these two para-reg snipers, and I was like, right, lads, on the signaller that has been sent over to work with you. And they went, you're not one of them cunts from 216, are you? And I went, no, mate, I'm 22 Signal Regiment. They went, oh, good. They're more airborne than the airborne. And I was like, oh, right. And I'd never really worked with 216. I'd heard about them. Like, I'd only been in the army a bit. And then after that, like working with the lads from 216, like individually they were great, but then you got together in a unit and they can, if you're not airborne, they can treat you a little bit rough. But then I went into the HQ area and they were based with them, right? And I started speaking to the 216 lad there, and he was a lad called Stevie Dunn. And I spoke to him and I said, I'm thinking about doing 216, the course. And he turned around to me and he gave me one of the best pieces of advice. He said, fuck off. And I went, what? And he went, go and put the course app in, and then you go in, and then I'll speak to you. And I was like, all right. And he said, honestly, go put the course app in, and then you go in. Good or bad, you go in, and then you'll train, and then you go. Everybody comes and says, you go and put the course up here. I'm going to go and do it. I'll go and do it. And they never do. But you put the course up in, you go in. And I was like, and he took the time to sit and talk to me, tell me about that I was going to go do it. And Stevie was unfortunately killed on his next tour. And I ended up working with one of his best mates in Pirbright when I was a section commander. And I told him that story, and he was like, yeah, that's Stevie Dunn through and through. And he was one of you meet people in your career who are mentors, right? And that you can work with them for minutes and you remember them throughout your entire career. And Stevie Dunn's one of those guys that I met for a couple of weeks, worked with him for a couple of weeks. Mm. And I always say that, like, I remember my two first things of meeting 216. One wasn't even meeting them. It was the paras telling me they're more airborne than the airborne. Mm. And then the second time was meeting Stevie Dunn and him dropping that knowledge bomb on me that changed my perspective. So I went from a tour where I was like, fucking hell, I don't, this isn't what the army's about. Winding up officers because they're whinging that their phone don't work and dodging anything to be doing my actual job, to learning, just do it, just go, do it. You know what I mean? So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think, yeah, in that tour, I probably realised that what I'd signed up for in the army wasn't it. And I think a lot of people in the Royal Signals, that's where their career goes wrong. They find that perhaps the Royal Signals isn't where they're meant to be, but they stay static doing that. And that's where you end up with a lot of people who are jaded with their careers. But that's not where you have to stay. That's what's great about the Royal Signals. You can change quite rapidly. And that's what I did when I came back from that corps. I took Stevie Dunn's advice. I put my course app in and I went and did, I put to go do P Company when I came back.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think a lot of times civilian businesses or the military, a lot of times when you find someone who, let's just say, like what you had, what might be described as a difficult attitude, people think, oh, it's because they don't want to be in the army, and it's a lot of the times it's because that person is not being able to, like, they want to be doing more soldiering, not less. And you know, sometimes it's for the old square pegs, round holes, and all that kind of thing. And I mean, it's great that you did it. I mean, but obviously from a leadership point of view as well, so that's where, you know, good leaders have to kind of recognize that in their people as well and figure out, right, you know, this isn't the personality traits of this person does not fit, you know, this. I mean, there's some people who might be in an infantry battalion and be the best storeman and be happy with that for the rest of their life. That's the person to have in that hole. And then there's, you know, other people, you pull them out of a platoon and then they're going to go sign off because, you know, all of a sudden they're not getting what they've joined for. And with the military, all those sacrifices you have to make, being away from home, everything like that. As soon as you're like really not hitting those kind of criteria for people, it's you know, it's something you can walk away from at the end of the day, and obviously a lot of people do because of that. So, how was your P Company experience?
So I came back from that tour and I was posted to 2 Signal Regiment up in York, and yeah, put my course up in, and when I did P Company from there, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was hard. It's hard. Like, never going to say it wasn't. It's a tough phys course to do, but yeah, it's an enjoyable course to do. It's the sense of achievement of completing it. and having like truly earned something. You know what I mean? I think that's what's great. The army is about. It's a true meritocracy. Once you get on it, you earn it. And I mean, I know now that like females have gone on it and earned the Maroon Beret. They have earned it. Trust me. I was on it. Like females had tried it when I was on the course, and I know guys that had been on it on the courses when they'd been on it, and they were like, "Yeah, the instructors were like, they're not passing. We'll break you all. They're not passing." So I'm pretty sure that like that Maroon Beret was coveted, and they passed everything. It's a hard course. So yeah, it's there's some bright spots on it as well. Like you see people truly conquering their own fears, like watching people on the trainasium, big hard guys who are high up, like willing their body to move, but their spirit's just not doing it. So yeah.
And from there, then, you were second. Is it second or two signal? Do you say two or second for these signals?
Two
signal.
yeah.
And did you go back out to Afghan with them?
Yeah, so 2 SIGs was interesting. So that was like, again, you don't realise it when you're doing it, but looking back, that was pretty much like that was probably one of the honours of my sort of career there. I was a Lance Corporal. We because that was Herrick 12 and 13, and we thought was a force protection company, because all the infantry were down south. All the force protection up in Kabul was given to the signals to do. So we formed a force protection company, and we did all the force protection for Kabul. So we were doing all the foot patrols, all the moves around there. And I was a brick commander, so I had a 4-man patrol, and it was me, a brick guy, Tom Searle, and 2 Gurkha lads, 2 Queen's Gurkha Signals lads. So I did 6 months beat up, 6 months tour, getting to be a Lance Jack in charge of 4 soldiers, doing the proper like patrolling and everything. 2 of them being Gurkhas, and yeah, I got to do the proper sort of stuff every day. It included being like with Gurkhas, which is the greatest honour any British soldier can have, I think. I mean, I'm sure you've worked with them. They're fantastic blokes. I mean, I've been lucky enough to 22 Signal Regiment have Gurkhas, Gurkha Squadron as well, QGS Squadron. 2 Signal Regiment have a QGS Squadron. I was on the Army shooting team a couple of times, and they're heavily represented there, heavily represented at Bisley. One of my best mates, both at Pirbright, both times, I was a section commander with him and a sergeant major with him. He's a Nepalese guy. We're going to go and do Nepal when he gets out of the army. So I really, really got on with the Gurkhas and the Nepalese people. So that was like an honour of my career, really. But yeah, it was just an interesting time to get out and do patrols, get out a bit more. But it's Kabul's completely different to anything like an infantry guy's doing down south, because it's a city. You're not there to get into contacts, because it's people's homes. You start doing that, it's much more akin to sort of the Northern Ireland days, and our training was like more Northern Ireland based than the kinetic stuff for down south.
I mean, what's it like? What year was this first in Kabul, and what's it like there? Like, what are your interactions with the locals like?
So it's Herrick 12 and 13. I did that one. So head's a bit Swiss cheese for dates. When was 12 and 13? 10, 11 is that? Yeah, it must be 10 and 11.
Back end of 11, I think, into 12. Don't quote me on that.
No,
I think so.
No, it's got to be 10 because I went to Pirbright in 11.
Back end of 10, sorry. Back end of 10, yes. Back end of 10 is up. Yes.
Yeah. So,
we're recording this early on a Saturday morning, so so there's a lot of maths going on, a lot of science going on.
Yeah. So Kabul's it's interesting because you're in like this. So I read a lot of like Afghan history, because obviously it's our it was like our fourth Anglo-Afghan war, right? And a lot of people might have read the lines of The Young British Soldier. It's a poem by Rudyard Kipling. And it's the lines, if you're wounded and dying on Afghanistan's plains and the women come out to cut up what remains, just roll on your rifle and blow out your brains and go to your death like a soldier, or go to your God like a soldier. I don't know if you've ever read that poem.
Yeah, it's just pure morale, isn't it, really?
Yeah, just absolute morale. Like, I had that on my wall I read that before joining the British Army and still went to Afghanistan twice. Like, lunatics, aren't we? Right? But that's from a poem called The Young British Soldier by Rudyard Kipling. And I read, there's loads, like there's a poem called The Ford Over Kabul River. They all come from Barrack Room Ballads, which is a book I've got on my shelf. And they're all poems written from the perspective of a British soldier, like a British ranker. One of my favourite poems is Road to Mandalay. That's on there as well, but that's more based in Burma. And these have all been ruined by being read in posh voices by like Boris Johnson. And everybody goes, "Oh, they're like jingoistic, racist poems by like posh boys," but they're not. They're meant to be read by like common soldiers who've gone to these far-flung places that they'd never imagined being sort of from. Like, imagine sort of a guy in 1860 who's born in Hinckley in Leicestershire, who's meant to be working in a knitwear factory. That's what he's meant to do. But he joins the Royal Leicesters and end up in Hindustan. And then he comes back to work in a knitwear factory, and then he's explaining to people what Kabul and Hindustan is like. You know what I mean? That's what these poems are actually about. So I'd read all of this, and then you end up in Kabul and you're seeing the ford over Kabul River. It was really interesting to be there in that history. And there's bits of it that haven't advanced all that much. And seeing like going past Kabul Zoo, where they've still had the lion that had savaged a Talib during the Taliban takeover. Yeah, I don't know if you'd heard that story.
No, I never heard that, mate. What's that?
So during when the Taliban took over Kabul, there's a lion still in the zoo. So he climbed in and he was going to kill this lion to prove his manhood, and it didn't work out for him. So the lion survived and the Talib didn't, and the lion was still in there.
He proved something.
Yeah, killed it out. Proved it. The Lion of Allah was stronger that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we used to go up to the palaces, like the princesses and prince palaces that had both been bombed out during the civil war and things. So yeah, it was great to get around the city and see all these bits that I'd read about in the history of Afghanistan before going there on my first tour and on the second tour. And interacting with the people as well. You get to see that that was where on my first tour I hadn't interacted as much up close with Afghans in that one, because it's more like I say, Northern Ireland in Afghanistan. You're patrolling the streets, doing force protection, you're making security for that area. And because we had Gurkhas with us, because they speak Hindi, and a lot of the Afghans watch like Bollywood films as well, so they can communicate really well. So we had really good relations with our sort of surrounding areas, with the village elders and everything around us. So we used to do all right when we were walking around speaking to people. We used to get the odd sort of black turban local who was like a young lad who wanted to give us the old stink eye, and or we used to have a couple of the areas that would be a bit more hostile towards us and clear out when we got there, or set the dogs on us and things like that. But generally, because it was it's their home, they didn't want to kick off too much. We had a few incidents of sort of threats, but we always had the Americans around, which were always a more precious target sort of thing. If they were going to clack off, they wanted to either hit the Americans or hit the Afghans, really.
And what was the vibe of the city? Like, did it feel like somewhere where there was, I guess, hope, where there was hope, and where because you turn up, you get off on a plane in any city, and you usually get the vibe, don't you? Like, what was it like there? Did you
Yeah.
feel like people were kind of could you see it being more, I don't want to say a Western city because it's its own place, obviously, but these like restrictions coming off it, and people, new businesses are like, during the 6 months that you're there, you're in a place for a long time. Could you see things developing and that kind of side of things?
So having gone off, having done like more sort of plain clothes stuff and been in cities where because it's difficult when you've got that separation of the body armor, helmet, big green vehicle, overt weapon. You're always going to have that standoff, and it's always, but like it's a city, it's busy, it's a lot going on, and I always their reaction to stuff over there is very different, and their bounce back. I always remember I did a little bit of time. I was over there when you remember there was that big volcano in Iceland, and all the flights got cancelled for ages. I covered for our Wiz's driver for a while, Wizwo's driver for a while, when he was stuck he got like the extended R&R, the jammiest bloke going. He got stuck, but unfortunately stuck in the UK because of that. So I covered for the Wiz's driver for a while. And there was a big incident on one of the routes, Route Violent, the Jalalabad Road. And basically a bus of like Afghan recruits had been, army officer recruits, I think, had been going along, had stopped, and a suicide bomber had got on and clacked off on the bus. So we'd gone out to that, and I think the cordon had been put on by the Afghan the police, I think it was, no, AMP. And I was stood with the Aussie Wiswo. And
what's a WISWO, please?
A weapons intelligence specialist warrant officer. So it's the guy who goes out to, whenever there's an explosion that goes off, he goes out to collect the evidence and stuff to try and identify the bomber, sort of thing. It was me. So we'd gone out. There was an American equivalent and an Aussie equivalent, and me and the Aussie driver, and that was the contingent that was out, and just the Afghan cordon. And around us, like something goes off there, it's the biggest thing ever. Like you see in the UK, a bomb goes off, everybody clears, right? They don't want to be anywhere near it. You see in Afghan, and even in sort of places I've been in Africa and stuff, an incident happens, everybody wants to get near it, see what's going on. And we were sat like just off where the incident had happened, sort of our own inner cordon, if you will, just making sure that nobody messed with them. And we were looking down the road at this big crowd, and I said to the Aussie bloke, I was like, "Is it me? Or are they getting closer?" And he was like, I won't do the Aussie accent. He was like, "Yeah, mate, it looks like it." And then we realised that the ANP had just left, and the cordon had collapsed, and it was like The Walking Dead. They were just coming to us, and yeah, like life had that was it. They'd done, and life was just resuming to the city. The bomb site was still so we just had to, because like that was it. We weren't going to achieve much, two of us protecting them, so we just jumped in the car and went. But there, as an active city, a bomb can go off and life would resume very quickly, if you get what I mean. So It's hard to say, is it a modern city? I've had friends that work there. Life goes on there no matter what. You know what I mean? There are modern buildings, like there's Wedding Hall roundabout and Masood roundabout and stuff like that. They've got big like skyscrapers around them. There's big sort of hotels and everything that catered to international crowds. I mean, the Taliban are now trying to legitimize and sell to other people, because it's a money-driven world, isn't it? They're trying to do that. Yeah, it's not a third world. I don't know. Your experience would have been different, because I suppose you would have been out in like out in sanging in the villages, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I was not saying it, but yeah, it was just mud bricks. So this idea that there's a normal functioning city in there somewhere is a bit
Yeah, no,
strange. Yeah, yeah. Was that your last time in Afghanistan, or did you go back with the FCDO?
no, I never went back with the FCDO. I always wanted to, just to see the other side of it, sort of thing.
So let me ask you this then: how when the evacuations from the Kabul and stuff took place, then how was that for you, having obviously been there for 6 months of your life and seen the place and put time in, risk yourself, and all that kind of side of it? How was it to see the evacuation taking place?
Really, it was wild because I was based in Camp Suta, which was literally just down the road from the airport as well. We used to do an airport run 2 nights a week at least. Well, we used to do an airport run every night of the week, but 2 nights a week of your multiple would at least be doing it. So we used to be there a lot, spend a lot of time at the airport. We had a school just down the road called Project Bland that was named after Sig Wayne Bland. He was a guy he was killed on the last week of my first tour. We were taken over with 16 Signal Regiment, and he was with 16 Signal Regiment in the last week of his tour doing force protection. So the job that I would do with 2 Signal Regiment, he was in the last week of his tour in Kabul, and was killed by a suicide bomber. So in his name, the Royal Signals units doing force protection set up a school near the Camp Suta, and we sort of protected it and provided for it. And it's called Project Bland, and it was a school where girls could go to school and everything. So obviously that's all stopped now under the Taliban. So I think every veteran that put time into it has sort of thought, well, that was time well spent. You know what I mean? And the only, well, yeah, there's not much really more to say about it, is there? It's, yeah.
Well, let's talk about this special communications course then, mate, and then the work you did with the FCDO.
Yeah, so 299 are a unit within the Royal Signals. I'd come back from operations, and Eric was sort of winding down, and I didn't really know what else to do. I'd done P Company, and I'd just got my posting to Pirbright, and that was something I'd always wanted to do. Since going through basic training, I'd wanted to be a section commander at basic training and really sort of shape recruits. So I was on my section commander's course, and I met a lad called Andy, and he said, "Oh, have you heard about this unit 299?" And I was like, "No." Well, I said, "I've heard about them." I said, "Not really, not really much." He was like, "I think you'd be really, really good for them. Come and have a go." I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And he was like, "Can't really tell you, but just come and have a go." And I was like, "Right, okay." And I said, "Well, I can't at the minute because I've got this in the bag. Always wanted to do this. I'm not giving this up. I'm going to go and do this. But once I've done that, I'll come and have a go." So I put that on the back burner for a couple of years, and I went and did my time at Pirbright as a section commander, and I'm so glad that I did. That was time at Pirbright. Training people was one of the best times I had, and it was. I don't think there's much you can helping develop others. I don't think there's much better time you can spend in life, to be honest. Whether that's in the army training people, in your spare time coaching a football team, volunteering with a charity, whatever it is. I don't think there's much spending time with your kids doing stuff, helping develop others. I don't think there's any better time spent. So I really enjoyed that. So I'm glad I did it. So anyway, my time at Pirbright was up, and I'd just been selected. I was looking at selection for sergeant sort of thing, and I had a real sort of path selection ahead of me because it was time for like one shot. I either went to 216, got my jumps, got my wings, because at this point I'm still a penguin. as they say. I'd done P Company, but I hadn't gone and got my wings yet, and I was getting a lot of stick for that constantly. I'd also, I'd done P Company in 2009, and this was now 2013, and I'd worn my maroon beret for about 2 weeks in that entire time. So I was itching to go and do that. But I knew that if I went and did that, I'd promote to sergeant while there, and then as a sergeant you can't go and do the 299 selection, and as a sergeant you can't go and do 264 selection, which were the other two options that I had. So 299 is going and working with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and 26 or SFC, Special Forces Communicator, is going and working with the Special Forces. So I then had the choice: which one of these am I going to go and do? So in the end, I put my eggs in the basket of I'm going to go and do the 299 selection. So I went and did that, and yeah, that was it. I put in the course, went and did the selection for that. It's a 6-month selection. Really interesting course. Get a interesting mix of people. It's only Royal Signals for it. It's a small unit, and yeah, I got through it. I was top student on the course. Started in September, finishing April time, and yeah, it patched in, whatever you want to call it, into the unit in April time, and was there for about 8 years.
So what could you kind of tell us, broad strokes, about the kind of work that you'd be doing there, the kind of places that you go, what you got out of it?
So, seconded to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and you support them with you're their comms support, you're their technical support. You're a diplomat when you're overseas, because most people working for the embassy are diplomats, just to do with the law and things like that. But yeah, you're their technical support, and depending on how big the embassy is, it can range in what that technical support looks like. So if you're in a more remote station, or a more remote embassy, you can be anything with a plug. So I've been in places in Africa where there's only a couple of people. When you get out there to help them, and they're like, "Oh, our satellite TV's gone down," and I've been like an absolute hero by fixing their like satellite TV. You know what I mean? But then there's other places where you're having real punchy impact with things. So I've worked all over the place with them. Worked all over Africa. Worked in the Middle East, Caribbean, in Europe, and got to work with really interesting people. Again, that barrier's down. You're not in a lot of the time. Well, I never worked in uniform when I was overseas with them, because I was always in diplomatic form, and so you're in civilian attire. So when you're working with locals, you're just a normal person, right? Yeah. And that completely changes the dynamic. So I got to work with the locals a lot more. Got to see that people are people, and those interactions were interesting. Sort of changed my perspective a little bit, and developed me a little bit. I worked with a lot of local teams, helping mentor local teams, and that really helped me when I returned to the army. And I was like you say, mentoring difficult people, leading difficult people. Because when I remember once I was in West Africa, and I was training somebody on a laptop, and he spoke a load of local dialects. He didn't speak any English. Our only shared language was French, and my French is as good as Del Boy's. So I did German at school. So I was trying to teach. Like he was very technically competent, and probably more technically competent than I was, but just the language barrier was the difficulty. I think he was getting frustrated about how technically incompetent I was at trying to teach him. But just funny things like that. You're trying to understand your own limitations in those environments. You know what I mean? Realizing that you're not always the big I am when you go to these places, because I think we have a lot of sort of arrogance when you go out on a tour. You always talk that you're the no, I say the good guy. You're the big guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, you've got to understand your own limitations to work around them. And in leadership positions, when I returned to the army, helped me understand that big badge isn't always the thing that makes you right. Sometimes you've got to understand that, mate, hang on, maybe I can work around this. Maybe that section commander that's been a section commander for 20 years is a better section commander than me. So maybe I should listen to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it as well when you're working in these other places is that it's that carryover from having been the British Empire and stuff as well, right? Which the British Army almost is one of the last holdovers of that in a sense, because we still do punch up above our weight as a small military. But as you say, when you go and work in these places, especially on a one-on-one basis, we like maybe there's that still thing of we kind of see ourselves sometimes. I'm speaking from my own experience as well, like certainly never did the kind of job you did, but we're going on and working with small groups and stuff, going to overseas places, working with the locals. There is almost that thing of, that whole thing of beating people with your British passport until they do as they're told. It's I think that's there's a little bit of that in all of us, I think, from the UK.
Yeah, there is. I think the British Army, the reason the British Army punches above its weight is because of its humility. Ironically, I think we don't take ourselves as seriously at the lowest level as some units, some like the Americans. The American soldier takes themselves very seriously compared to sort of a British soldier will. Like you see that at sort of like the SF level. Like you work with an American Tier 1 SF unit, they take themselves very seriously compared to sort of like a UK unit. And that's where the UK unit is why the UK units are better. They might not have, they don't spend as much money, they don't have the budget, but they go with the flow a lot better. And that is what makes them truly, truly great to see them work compared to the two. I think it's the humility and the ability to adapt, to go with it compared to the rigidity of the weirder. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just flip.
No, I think you're bang on that. I've actually read, I can't remember whose book. It might be Frank Ledwidge's book, and he was kind of saying that one of the army's downfalls is that it's almost like the ethos of cracking on, basically, which means, right, well, we haven't got enough to do this job. We haven't had the equipment or whatever, but we'll find a way of getting it done. And that becomes a self-perpetuating cycle where the army, well, and by the army, I mean the soldiers, bails itself out of so many positions that it has no right to succeed in, that then the MOD or whoever goes, well, we can get rid of more stuff from them. And then the army and the soldiers will again crack on, get themselves out of that position. And it becomes this, I'm pretty sure it was, I think Frank Ledwidge had a chapter on it in his book, Losing Small Wars. And I just thought that was a fascinating thing that I think I read about the Falklands once, was because the guys were saying, because a lot of stuff went wrong when they got there, but they still did their job. And it was like, well, yeah, everything goes wrong on every fucking exercise that we do. We're used to everything going wrong and nothing turning up at times and stuff. And yeah, like I think there's a really great points for it. Is there anything else you want to say about that before we start talking about your med discharge and the advocacy work that you've been doing?
Well, no, it was the time at the squadron was sort of pivotal for me. It just really shows that I'd say to anybody in the army that's sat there thinking this is shit, because I've met so many of them. I won't say that I was jaded towards the army, even how it turned out. I don't think I'd change a thing. Like I say, I think it was my dharma to go through it.
What's a dharma? Sorry, mate.
So if you believe in sort of Eastern religions, sort of Hinduism, Buddhism as well. Dharma is your path. So everybody's born with a dharma. So your path, you're on it. No matter what, whether you believe it or not, you're on a dharma. So in Buddhism, you have dharma and you have karma, which is your action. So my philosophy, I've got it figured out. It's live your dharma, watch your karma. That's all you got to do, man. Live your dharma, watch your karma.
There you go. People turned up for some more stories. They're getting Eastern philosophy lessons.
Yeah,
Probably
but yeah, no. So yeah, but the armies, there is always something else out there, and I know having like worked with the infantry a lot, having like got posted to Pirbright, and that was a great thing about there as well, was that you got exposed to working like closely with infantry guys. Like some of my best mates there were infantry, like Royal Irish guys and rifles lads, and you got to see their mentality. They turned up, their mentality shifted. They turned up, and it's like unless you won rifles, you're a fucking remph. You know what I mean? And then after a while, they'd be like working with like Royal Signals blokes, and like, actually, you're not the absolute loser that I thought you were, and you actually get treated a little bit better than we do. And by like that end of the time, they're like, how do I get a transfer to the Royal Signals, or how do I like a good mate of mine? I don't know if I'll mention his name because he might be embarrassed by it. Nah, but he transferred to the veterinary corps after like the rifles. He wanted to go back afterwards. Yeah, but we had guys transferred to the med corps. We had guys transferred to, like, because they were like, they saw that guys were getting treated better. Yeah. They sort of they broke outside of that. You know, the old frog in a well. Have you ever heard that thing? Nope. Frog in a well. If a frog in a well looks up and sees the sky, they think that is the entirety of the sky, right? Because that's all they can see of it. But if they get out of the well and they see all of it, like coming to like in a battalion or in their company, they're told that is the entirety of the sky right there. They come to Pirbright and speak to the corps and speak to people. They realise, well, there's all that other stuff out there. So I think that's what the good thing about the squadron was for me, was that it broke me out of each one of these little courses that I went and done. And this all came from the advice Stevie Dunn gave me. Put the course app in, you'd go it. Each one of these little courses showed me a little bit more of the sky that was there in the army that I could go and do. I could do these things.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fascinating time to be someone who wants to join the military because, you know, having done these interviews and just meeting people, mates, etc., there's almost that lottery of who's on the desk when you go in the recruiting office back in the day, isn't it? You know, that you go as a pirate, right? You go in the pirate reg. Or people say, no, we're not a pirate, right? You get my point. But now, you know, it must be. At the same time, there is all that. What is it? When you have too much choice, it can become almost paralyzing, and people second guess themselves. You know, the amount of information now. You know, you go and look at every different regiment's social media page. I mean, I love following some of the Royal Army Corps social media pages. They do a great job. They might have definitely lulled me in that back in the day and stuff. But yeah, it's a fascinating place for recruits to be coming into now.
Yeah, I think recruiting's a different issue. I think once you put the actual recruiting process into a civilian's hands, I mean, after I left the squadron, I went back to Pirbright as a Squadron Sergeant Major. And that was, I'd already started struggling with PTSD by this point. So when I was I was on a job, and I got a phone call from a friend's wife, friend's fiance, to tell me that he'd committed suicide. A friend of mine, Sergeant Fraser Sterling from the Royal Irish, fantastic guy. I was section commander with him at Pirbright, and told me he'd committed suicide. And for me, it was sort of, it wasn't the fact that he'd done it that had sort of hit me. It was the fact that it was just sort of, it was that easy. You know what I mean? It twigged in me that sitting, drinking whiskey, looking at a beam, going, you could hang yourself off that, mate, wasn't normal. Like, that was within me. I was really ill at that point. So I put my hand up at that point and said, look, I'm really struggling. And the army, the army will give you a nudge and a wink and keep you going, even if you put your hand up. And it did that to me a couple of times. During COVID, I was managing a troop and I put my hand up and said, I'm really not doing well here. And I even went through to DCMH and spoke to them at DCMH, and just how it was handled, I was allowed to be given a nudge and a wink and pushed back along into a job. And I ended up back at Pirbright as a Sergeant Major, and I was really struggling at this point, but I was just trying to keep going along, sort of thing. And yeah, my last job at Pirbright, I enjoyed it because I got to be a Sergeant Major. Again, there are points in my career that I'm glad I had. You know what I mean? Having now sat back, and I have been during my time of being really not well and having to sort of process a lot of things and go back through your career, and when it's made you ill, you have to think, was it worth it? What is it worth the pain, sort of thing? And it absolutely has been, because as a child, I wanted to be a soldier. That was it. And now sitting at the other end of it, I have to look back and go, was I a soldier? Did I achieve my aim in the military terms? And one of them was I got to be a Brit commander in charge of 3 other people, including 2 Gurkhas, going on patrol, looking after them. They all came back safe. They said I was a good person to take them out on patrol. That's box ticked. I got to be a warrant officer in charge of a squadron of people, in charge of a squadron of trainees. And I always, as you can tell probably by my sort of trying to wind officers up by drinking 0 alcohol beer, and there's loads of other things that I've done in my career to sort of, one of the things from, I can't tell you many stories about work, but I made it a returnable offence. One of my party tricks was jumping off buildings into swimming pools in embassies. So it's a returnable offence in 2 embassies around the world to jump off a building into a swimming pool because of me. But so I've never looked up for approval for what I'm doing. I've always looked down. I've always looked to the people that I'm in charge of to make sure that it's going right. You know what I mean? And that's not in a sort of, oh, do they like me sort of way. Like, we used to call it a FOC at Pirbright, a friend of Crow. Somebody who's like trying to, you know what I mean, trying to get the recruits to like them. Not in that way, but in a sort of, is this the right thing to do for the troops, rather than is this going to get me noticed by the higher ups? And that's the way I've always looked at it. And when I was a Sergeant Major, that's the way I looked at it for, am I doing the right thing for my guys? And I had I had difficult people to lead at Pirbright, mainly section commanders with whinges to have. And I made sure that they could come and have those whinges to me, and I'd stand there and have the conversation with them if they wanted to. Because people, they're going to have that whinge, right? And they're either going to have that whinge in their own head over and over and over again, which is unhealthy. It's really unhealthy. Or they're going to have that whinge to one of their mates. And that mate might not have anything to whinge about, but they're going to, after their mates whinge to them, and then they're going to whinge to somebody else, and before you know it, the whole squadron of full screws has got something to whinge about, and then the lads jacks have got something, and then the SIG has got something. So I've always tried to engage with people. So yeah, I think that was the second point. I got to do that, despite being on the way down at that point. It was something I was glad to do, but it also showed me maybe it was time to finish my career time. The army the juice was getting less than the squeeze for me. So I put my hand up again, and it was something I did quite publicly as well, as in with my squadron. I said to them, look, said to my senior NCOs, I'm not well. I need to bug out, I'm afraid, troops, because I'm not well. Because again, we talk a good game in the military about, oh, it's okay not to be okay, but then when you do it, they're not great at how they handle it, and they don't know what to do about it, and that's part of what we would talk about.
For you as a sergeant major in a training establishment, suffering because of things caused by your service, was there ever like a guilt complex, or maybe there's a better term for it, about, was fucking hell, am I going to inflict on these people, or am I going to put these people in positions to then suffer as I am now suffering because of the service?
Massively. I actually went back to Pirbright. So again, bear in mind, I'd put my hand up twice. I'd already been through some treatment. I'm a self-reflective person anyway. So I'd already been doing a lot of reflecting, and I went back to Pirbright because I think I'd started struggling after my first 2 tours of Afghan. And I'd just been compounding it ever since, really. And I think that if somebody had sort of, because I never had any sort of discipline issues in the military until I got to about full screw. Then at about full screw, my alcohol consumption massively ramped up. My discipline issues sort of ramped up. My performance and ability on tour ramped up. So I'd go away on jobs, and when I was focused, I was hyper focused, and I'd do really well. But then when it was quiet, the voices started, and the voices needed to be stopped, and that they'd be stopped in normally by alcohol, but then you get to the blackout stage and the voices take over again, and then the mad stuff happens. And I'm sure some of your listeners can probably jive with that, if you will, vibe with that. So, but I thought that was around Pirbright, and so I wanted to go back to Pirbright to ping somebody that was going through that, if you know what I mean, pay off some of my karma, try and stop somebody. And with the recruits, I had a recruit that I took through training that committed suicide, which was very tough. And you think, like, yeah. So yeah, no, there was definitely, but again, you think about dharma and karma. People have their own choices to make. That's why you have, if you're wounded and dying on Afghanistan planes upon your wall. I used to do a lesson. There was a lesson in the syllabus called Realities of War, and it was meant to be given by the troop commanders, right? And now the troop commanders they're troop commanders, that they are young leaders that are joining the military. They are great young officers. My question was, what benefit do the recruits get learning about the realities of war, being read a thing from a troop commander who's just out of training? How does that teach them the realities of war? And the idea was to prepare them for going to World War I battlefield or tour. So I said, this shouldn't be taught by a troop commander. This should be a squadron lesson taught by the Sergeant Major. It should be taught by the senior soldier, somebody who has at least some experience of some sort of reality of war, some sort of. So I used to do that lesson, and I used to make it as brutally honest as possible about it. I used to bring experience of working against ISIS, of things like that. Some of the like modern warfare. I used to bring comparisons between. I'd bring World War I up and say, look at all these. Look, we're going to go and see this trench warfare. This doesn't happen anymore, does it? And then I'd bring up footage of Ukraine happening. My friend, like, yeah. So I sort of salve my soul by making them as informed as possible about the decision they were making. And then when we went to France and Belgium to do the thing, I'd say, right, you're gonna see thousands of graves, Like, I'd take them to war graves and I'd say, right, look at this war graves. There are more soldiers here than you will ever see on a parade in this one thing. That is a reality of a whole-scale war, that there are more soldiers in this graveyard than you will see on a parade ever. There's more soldiers in here than I've seen together in a parade. I'd ask them to find a grave that spoke to them in some way. I always used to go and find like a Royal Leicester's soldier that just for some reason, just to try and not, it might seem morbid to some, but it was just to try and bring some reality back to people, that they were picking a job to be soldiers, to be, because I think that's the problem these days. Too many people choose a role and it's just all surface. You know what I mean? Like, you're picking to be a soldier, like, understand what you're doing, because I think that the way the world is going, our soldiers are going to need to be tougher than tough at the minute. I think what we had in the global war on terror, I think is going to be widespread, unfortunately.
Do you think that maybe, I mean, right now, if you want to see a glimpse into the reality of war, obviously I say a glimpse because it's just a video. But, if you jumped on Instagram now, spent half an hour on there, you could find all kinds of manner of terrible death and things like that in Ukraine. Do you think that puts people off, or do you think that there's always something like, I'm kind of putting my own opinion on this now, but if you're, young, dumb, and full of cum, you can see all of that, and just, you by definition as a young bloke, not that it's just young blokes are chilling, you think, well, yeah, it's going to happen to other people, that ain't going to be me, so.
Yeah, there is, the bit of both. There's a desensitizing element to it, particularly with sort of drone warfare. I've said this for years. I've talked about drone warfare for quite a lot with people, and I worry about the mental health of the guys who are flying FPV drones. The 18-year-old lads that started like flying FPV drones into people, their dreams are going to be full of the faces of the availability of horrific footage that now just pops up on, like, you used to, back in the day, you used to have to go and find like Best Gore or whatever on the web to go and find this. So now it just pops up on anywhere. So yeah, the reality of war is easy to find, but I think that the ease of finding it switches how real it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. You mentioned those sites, and I've just had some horrible old images flash in my head, and yeah. Yeah. I know when the American drone programs kind of got started, I forget the numbers now, but the rates of those drone operators, your Predator drones, etc., were very high. So I mean, I can only imagine at the rate that these operators are doing it, and they're closer to the front line as well. So you've got that added thing on top of it. So
there's a fantastic book by a guy called Carl Melantes. It's called What It's Like to Go to War.
Yeah, add him on the podcast, mate.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. It's great.
So absolutely fantastic book, and I recommended that to my psychologist, Dr. Imogen Sturgeon-Clegg. Fantastic psychologist. Only reason I'm as sane as I am today. She's I recommend it to her, and it's fantastic. And he talks about the gap between like flash to bang, war and home. And yeah, the people flying drones who are like dropping warheads on foreheads, counting limbs, and then going home and doing the school run. Like, that is a big issue. Yeah, it is that separation between sort of, all right, love, yeah, okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, I'll cook the dinner. Yeah, sorry, you had a tough day. Okay. It is a real issue.
So let's get into your veteran advocacy, mate. Can you talk us through your kind of journey to from leaving the military to becoming veterans ambassador for Emerald Clinic?
Yeah, so I'd basically I put my hand up at Pirbright, started the discharge process, and quickly figured out that no one was coming to help, right? So I was a SEER instructor in the army, and one of the key things about being in the SEER environment, so the survival environment, is promote your own recovery. And I was sat at home doing the normal soldier thing of just drinking my way through it, and I got to about Christmas time, and I was like, this isn't working. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different outcome is the definition of insanity. So I needed to change something, and I looked into. I've been looking into medicinal cannabis, and I'd read quite a few books. There's one called Through the Smoke by Professor David Nutt, which is fantastic, and it talks a lot about the endocannabinoid system, and it taught me about the endocannabinoid system. I don't know if you know about the endocannabinoid system.
I do not.
No. So whether you've come into contact with cannabis, the plant, or not, I won't get you to admit whether you have or not. You have cannabinoids in your system, okay? And it was discovered in the mid sort of 90s. And the problem we've always had with cannabis is that we didn't know how it worked. So that was the thing. So it's got to be bad, right? We just don't know how it works. So it's got to be bad. So there's about 5,000 years recorded history of humans interacting and using cannabis. 2,000 years of using it as a medicine. So there's a pharmacopoeia a list of medicines from like 2,000 years ago. The same one that describes opiate as a painkiller describes cannabis as an anticonvulsant. So stopping fits. So the same thing that we can use cannabis for today, we've known for 2,000 years that's what it does. We don't know how it works, so it's got to be bad. But then mid-90s, we discovered this thing called the endocannabinoid system. So you have a central nervous system. We also have this thing called the ECS. So the ECS is one of its main roles is homeostasis, right? So it controls balance within your body. So the reason it works on so many things is because it controls balance. It doesn't sort of target specific thing. It's sort of like, so works on your arthritis, right? Arthritis is an overaction of inflammation. The endocannabinoid system controls balance. It goes, whoa, calm down with it. Reason it controls fits, it controls balance. And whole plant medicine, so the whole plant, it's synergistic, so it works across systems and it works on multiple systems. So it works on your digestive system, it works on your brain, it works on your bones. And we've known this for thousands of years. We've developed alongside it. We've evolved alongside this. The knowledge has been there. We've just not known, well, since the mid-90s, we've known why, because of the endocannabinoid system. But essentially, since the mid-30s, there has been a sort of campaign against it. It stopped being used as a medicine because of a campaign against drugs. And we sort of lost this connection with it. That's sort of been reinvigorated more recently with more research. But I'd done this research and looked into veterans using it in Canada, because it's big out there. Do you know cannabis is legal at the federal level in Canada? So everybody can use it. That includes serving soldiers. So in Canada, cannabis is treated as the same as alcohol. So soldiers in Canada can use exactly the same as they would use alcohol, which I think is a great idea. I need to look up their suicide rates, because a couple of my friends that have committed suicide have been drunk when using it, and when committing suicide. I personally don't think they would have done it if they were, because I know my personal feelings a bit when I've been drinking go very dark, and they've never been once like that when I've been medicated. The actual sort of effects of cannabis on PTSD, how it works. So I won't use the brain terms because I'm not great at it, and I end up sounding like the water boy, medulla oblongata. So basically, the thinky bit goes quiet and the shouty bit goes loud with PTSD. And cannabis reverses that. You can see it in brain scans. PTSD is not a disorder. It's not something you can talk your way out of. It's a brain injury. It can be seen physically in brain scans, and so can the effect of cannabis on it. All of this is scientifically known. So, yeah, I read all of this, saw all of this, got myself prescribed, took cannabis, and felt relief from some of my things that I hadn't felt in years. Felt myself again, felt able to engage in stuff again, and knew that this was the answer. And I was like, why are more people not engaging with this? Why are we not pushing this out? So yeah, I go to a couple of music festivals with my wife and friends, and the people that I met at my first unit, and I was an usher at their wedding, and they're put on by a fantastic human being called Freddie Fellows, and he's got a great piece of land down in Cambridge, and I was at one of his music festivals, and a new cannabis company was there, a Canadian guy called James, and I got speaking to him about cannabis and veterans cannabis, and he was like, I'm from Canada, we do loads of veteran stuff there. And I was explaining to him that in the UK we've got like, and all over the world you have like veterans coffee companies, yeah, like that. They market coffee to people, they market gin to us, they market this, but nobody's going, we are the, like, cannabis is needed for veterans because it will help veterans, and it's legal to come and get it medically. And when I speak to veterans about cannabis, they're either like, oh, I don't think I can get it because of this reason. The gen is all wrong, if you will. The duty rumor is all wrong around it. People think, well, if I have that, I can't drive. Well, of course you can. It's a prescribed medication from a doctor. It's no different than the massive amount of opiates that you prescribe for your, like, arthritis or your chronic pain, that you may not need as much of if you're prescribed cannabis. So I was talking to him about this at this music festival, and I lost touch with him a little bit. I then went to do some work at Freddie's, helping him out to get ready for another music festival, and James just happened to turn up again, and then got speaking to him again, and said, look, you need a veterans ambassador. You need somebody to get out there and go to the veterans community and with some credibility and say, look, this is what's happening. This is the experience. Because I think online advertising and everything is starting to lose its credibility. You know what I mean? With AI and everything like that, people are like, is this Jen? Is this real or what? So you need somebody from that community to turn up and go, look, no, really, honestly, this, especially when it's something around drugs, because I think the military have got this very much, drugs are bad. Yeah, drink 20 pints and fill each other in. Like the whole decompression from Afghanistan was ridiculous, wasn't it? Get yourself into Bloodhound Camp, drink 5 pints and kick shit out of each other, right? Like, imagine decompression. Come into Bloodhound Camp, smoke a joint, sit around a fire, talk about what's happened, right? Imagine how much better that decompression would be for a unit, rather than, yeah, just go drink some beers, watch some shit stand-up comedians, and go into the bushes to fill each other in. Like, so yeah, and basically, that was it. I got I really read into the science behind it, and what it unlocked for me was the ability to use all of these other tools that I'd been given during my recovery that weren't being unlocked by all the pills that I was being given. Right. So we're taught there are loads of the meditation, right, or mindfulness. Okay, the use of yoga and things like that. Things that have been around for thousands of years. Have been around for thousands of years because they work. Do you know what else has been around for thousands of years? PTSD. Soldiers and warriors have always had it, and these techniques have always been there to go against it. I read about PTSD in the Middle Ages, of like knights getting PTSD, and the treatment a 13th century monk gave to a knight is pretty much the same as I use, right? He gave him sort of prayer and stuff, which is meditation, mindfulness, right? And then small tasks to keep the mind busy that you're capable of. It's exactly the same as we do, but we combine it with heavy sort of drugs, which are designed to treat PTSD. The treatment that we're given isn't to treat PTSD. The treatment is to treat anxiety, it's to treat depression, which are all side effects of PTSD or symptoms of PTSD. But cannabis also treats those, but in a less harsh way, with less side effects, less risk to them, right? And you also end up taking more drugs to combat the side effects of the drugs that you take, which get you further away from being able to put things like yoga, mindfulness, and these other things that help you physically. So it's a better route to a holistic recovery, if you will. And that's the aim, is a more holistic recovery, to be in a more functioning person, to be able to get back to sort of society, really. Because another thing I suffer with is something called moral injury, which is, again, I think started in Canada. We're starting to recognise it in the UK. And think of it like an onion. You have like PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and moral injury. It's where your sort of deeply held moral beliefs have been like shattered, and you no longer feel connected to sort of society or anything. And the sort of the collapse of Afghanistan sort of thing, for veterans who spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, will have caused moral injury amongst a lot of people. So I spoke to veterans who like, well, I haven't got PTSD, but I don't know what's wrong with me, sort of thing. And that can be this moral injury. And the treatment for that is getting back to feeling part of society. But that's difficult to do when all you've got is this rage and this sort of ball of anger or whatever in you that you're treating with either copious amounts of alcohol, or a lot of guys get out and they take cocaine and things like that, and other drugs. So yeah, that's basically how I came to finding out about medicinal cannabis and linking up with Emerald. And the reason I linked with Emerald was because the real sort of care for veterans, that was the minute I mentioned like the veteran thing, they were like, yeah, Canada are doing this is what we need to do, we really want to get in with the veterans. And also just sort of the quality of the product that they were using, they call it the flower, the greed, because it was coming across from that technology and their farms, their individual stuff. It was just better quality and better sort of price, because I'm a poor disabled veteran that's still fighting the absolutely ridiculous compensation system that we have in the UK, which is a whole other podcast in itself. That was part of it, and I'm working with them now to sort of set up how we market, so how we get the message out to veterans, a reward scheme, sort of how we do that, a support system, a support network. So that was really part of it as well, being able to be there from the start and really sort of shape it, how we get this support out to veterans.
So you made a very compelling case, to myself at least. I mean, personally, I'm of the opinion that a person's body is, they have every right to do whatever they want in the first place. But you have also made a compelling medical case there. What are the downsides?
For me, I don't see a downside, to be honest with you, because I don't get this whole idea of going, well, what's the downside? Because if you're saying a downside, you have to look at the comparison. You're talking about somebody with, if you're taking it for a medical reason, right, you've already got an illness, okay? So if you're taking another medication for that illness, you have to put it against that, balance it against any other medication. And any other medication has other side effects and has other things. And out of all the other medications out there, cannabis is the lowest risk going. Now, there are risks to cannabis. I mean, the only way to die of it is if like a ton of it falls on you.
So store it in the lower cupboards. Gotcha.
Yeah, if you've got a ton of it, store it low down. To any police watching, I haven't got a ton of it. I don't store any of it. I just get my prescribed amount. But there are risks of psychosis that are noted. But this is prescribed by a doctor. You have to take a very small amount for the medicinal dose. I'm not talking about smoking joints like this, because you don't smoke it. To take it medicinally, currently Emerald provide flower, which is the green, and I'll show you what I've got. So I've got this is
oh my god, there's a ton of it.
This is my small medical vaporizer. So this is all just like convection oven, and it goes in a small. That's my small sort of dosing pot. So it's literally a tiny amount. So you vaporize it in that. You could also get like gummies, oils, or the vaporizers. Emerald don't stock those yet, but they will do shortly. They're just making sure that they get the because they want to provide the best quality ones, and because it's a fairly new market in the UK, they just want to make sure that they're getting the absolute best ones. But yeah, so you're not smoking like it, because inhaling anything is inhaling any smoke is really bad for you anyway. There are studies that show that smoking cannabis pure cannabis isn't any riskier for you. But yeah, the risk of psychosis is low because, one, it's not prescribed for people if you are at risk, because it's prescribed by a doctor. And two, you're taking it under the guide of a medical professional. So if you compare it against, read the side effects of one of the medications that you would be taking instead of cannabis, the risk is next to nothing. So I think the downsides are drastically overplayed. One of the other things that it frustrates me that you'll see that cannabis gets attacked in the media a lot. There was a Lad Bible, of all things, putting a thing out about, a lady, a gateway drug led to her being hooked on Class A substances, and it was like cannabis leads to a woman being hooked. Well, no, trauma led to her being hooked on Class A substances. The fact she started with cannabis means nothing. She probably started with alcohol before that, but that's not mentioned. And I'd say that the fact that she was forced to associate with criminals to get a life-saving plant maybe had something to do with it. And things that there's studies recently published in the Lancet looking at how efficient it is at treating mental health conditions like PTSD. But it looked at random control testing, and it said, with random control testing, we can't show how efficient it is. The problem is random control testing is for single molecule drugs. And we're looking at whole plant medicine. Like I said, whole plant medicine is synergistic. We're looking at not just THC, we're looking at CBD, we're looking at the terpenes in plants. There's a lot. So in whole plant medicine, you have something called terpenes, which is like the flavor, essentially. So in like chilies, you'll have terpenes. And there's some studies that show that it's the flavors, the terpenes, that have an impact on how that plant works. So you have you have two different sorts of cannabis plant. You have sativa and you have indica. Sativa is the plant that gives you like an up feeling, like that. Oh, I feel energetic and good. And then you have indica. It gives you sort of a relaxed feeling and painkiller feeling, and reduces like aches and things, and makes you feel down, like a lot more chilled out. That you can have two plants that have exactly the same amount of CBD and THC in them, but have completely different effects. So people are like, well, how is it the CBD and the THC that affect? Well, the answer is probably it's the terpenes in it that affect that amount. So RCTs won't tell that. It's only the effect, like the actual lived experience of it, that can tell you it. But you'd say that to medical professionals or something. Wow, we can't accept that. We can't accept thousands of years of people going, if I take this plant, it helps.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that a plant that we can grow that has limited side effects, that you could be under the care of a medical professional, and we have all of this. And the other option is either people don't get help, or they are chain fed medications that don't even treat, like in the case of PTSD, don't directly treat the thing they have.
Yeah. Yeah, or you can go down, bag of booze and buy 10 litres of vodka. No dramas.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Bag of booze not affiliated with the podcast, by the way. But yeah, mate, I think the dosage thing is very important, because I think, most people, for being honest, probably had an experience with weed. It might have been a good one, it might have been a bad one, but I think the dosage is very important. And same as mushrooms or whatever, I think I'm convinced that mushrooms are incredibly helpful for.
So the one thing I'll say with people's experience with cannabis, I always get, this is my first conversation I have with people. I had some weed and it made me sick. I threw up everywhere, and I'll always go, "Were you pissed when you had it?" And they always go, "Oh yeah." Do you think it was the 5 pints of beer you had before you introduced a substance you'd never had before to your body? That's normally the conversation I have with people. So I would say, if you're going to try cannabis, first of all, try it pure. Don't have it, because people have given me cannabis before. I've gone, "Oh, do you want some of this?" And I've gone, "That's got tobacco in it, hasn't it?" And it's the tobacco that's written me off, because I'll get a head rush from tobacco and it'll kill me. And make sure that you've not had alcohol before it.
Yeah, get it from your doctor. Get the right dose. But actually, I'll say this as well. I mean, like I said, I think we're all very similar. We're all very different, right? And so what works for some people won't work for others. But the idea that these things should not be available to people to try, because someone might try it and then decide it's not for them, fine. But for people to not have that option, I think is insane. To be honest, especially when there's like you said, there's so much historical, and even if it's like, at the end of the day, if I've got 5 people that I trust that have tried something, and they say, "Hey, we've been through similar situations, this helped me," that means a lot more to me than a controlled trial or whatever like that. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's the right one. But I think
the thing is, it is available, and it's going to be available whether people want it or not. And this is the other conversation I have with. I say, "Oh, I prescribed it," and people say, "Oh, I didn't even know you could get it prescribed. I just get it from." So people go to get it anyway, and yeah, exactly. And Emerald, like I say, it is probably cheaper, and it is 1,000 times better, cleaner. You know exactly what it is you are getting, and it is prescribed for what you want it for. You're not getting weed. You are getting prescribed for, this will help your PTSD. Because don't get me wrong, if you have PTSD and somebody gives you a really strong sativa that is not what you need. you need to sit down with a professional who knows what you are having and say, right, you need to chill out at the end of the evening. You need a nice indica with this in it. Right, okay, take this amount, weigh this amount out in there, have a sit down, take this, start with this. And that's what you need to do. Sit down with the professional, go through it and get your prescribed cannabis. Buying from your mate and going, this is weed, take this. Because, like I said, there's 2 strains of plant, or 2 types of plant, but from there are many strains. And now we have, coming from the US, you get all this Cali coming from the US. They have cross-generated plants to make it as strong as possible to sell it to people for the recreational market. And the recreational market is designed to mess you up as much as possible, get you as high as possible. It's like drinking the strongest strength beer that you can find. If you're trying to have a nice mellow evening at home with the family, you don't crack open a can of Skull, do you? Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, man, I'm an advocate of anybody doing whatever kind of works for them. So, but I do think as well, I'm sure I know you're on the same page with this. That can only be one part of the equation, right? The other part is, as you've been talking about things like meditations, yogas. Again, everyone has different versions of that. Meditation could be walking through a forest and listening to the sounds. You know, it doesn't need to be what people traditionally think of as meditation things. But so the other side of this now, you've also got the Campfire Collective, right? And these, I think, would you agree that for some people one might do the trick, for some people the other might do the trick, but for a lot of people it's this it's kind of getting out your own way to build to rebuild this kind of healthier mind through things outside of what would the word be? Not pharmaceuticals, but pharmacology.
Yeah, it's healthy body, healthy mind. Right? You've got to, you have to change the patterns that you're building for yourself anyway. I found that once the cannabis had helped me get a bit of space to practice those things, it helped me get up and get out a little bit. And the Campfire Collective, first of all, like I say, I was a SEER instructor, and my wife is a forest school leader. I've got to say that cannabis, the Campfire Collective, none of that's all helped me. The only reason I'm still here is because of my wife. I would not be here at all without her. She's carried me through the entire thing, and I think that's where a lot of veterans end up falling apart, is because we are difficult. You say about leading difficult people. When veterans come home to their families and fall apart, they're horrible. They can be horrible people to be around. And I know I've been a horrible person to be around at times. So I can't thank my wife, Kat, enough for putting up with me and carrying me through it all. So part of
a spouse is available on the NHS as well, or it's something else find yourself.
I know, yeah. They're expensive at times, but well worth it if you can keep hold of one. No, so she does forest school, which is essentially getting kids into the woods to teach them as well. And she does very young age. She does like preschool and year 1 and year 2, and instilling it at young ages. And we own a small little bit of woodlands. And I had this idea that we've always had the campfire, right? Since we had fire, we've always gathered around this campfire for safety and everything like that. And part of post-traumatic stress is the fact that you go through something and you don't get to process it, right? And I got it, and it was from Carl Melantez's book. You don't process it. You just get stuck and you just keep going over it. And it's the same with people are going to complain. And if they don't have somebody to complain to, they're going to complain to themselves. And that negative thought becomes reality, because you just keep going over it until it's true. Even if it's not true, but make it reality for yourself, because you make that pattern in your brain that it is true, right? And like, this is shit, this is shit, this is shit. And do you know what? Before you know it, it's shit. We've all met that guys that no matter what is having a good day. You know what? Like, in pissing rain. All right, lads, how's it going? Like, nothing can get. It's all right. It's a good day, isn't it? And just being around them, it's a good day. And I think that chance of processing that gets it out. And I figured, well, it happens around the campfire at the end of the day. So the idea was to have the woods and get people into the woods, into a space where they could get a chance to have a bit of mindfulness. Because first of all, trying to meditate or get mindfulness, like you say, it's not, don't have to think of it as the as a Buddhist monk sat there connecting or like praying or however you think. Meditation, mindfulness is just trying to silence your mind for however long you can. Really, just connecting your body and your mind for a second, if you can, just to get some quiet. And I found that for me, the best place to do that is in nature, in some woodland. So, one, to provide that space for people to do that, and then to come together around a fire, and to have a chat. And generally, you'd be surprised at how a group of strangers or a group of people open up and just sort of chat about things that you wouldn't believe over just around a campfire. And the collective idea was that my vision is just to go around to places where people want that, do a bit of a lesson on a bit of a survival lesson, a bit of sort of how to build a fire from scratch, because you'd be surprised how many people just can't gather the kit they need, and with a spark start a fire, get that campfire going, teach people how to build a campfire, and then just sit around it, have a bit of a guided discussion about sort of trauma and how we deal with it and how we go through things. I mean, I'm not a counsellor, I've just been through stuff. But then they've got their own campfire collective, because that's all you need. All you need is a spark and some people to talk to. And then that's all you need. And then they've got the connection to the woods to come whenever they want. And we host sort of parties, if you will, where people come down, they help us in the woods, clear some areas, build some stuff. The aim is to build a bit of a cabin down there. We've used the woods to help get some veterans who have been homeless. We've housed them in the woods for a little bit. We had a guy called Sean. He lived down there for a couple of months over winter when he would have been on the streets in Milton Keynes, and he's a part of the family now. And he helps us out a lot. The aim is to build a bit more of a better place that we can put people if we need to. And yeah, that's what the idea of the campfire collective really is, just build a bit of a community of people to connect back with nature and start building community again. I think that's what's missing in the world. Well, in the UK, let's start small.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, what's something that you've kind of like, obviously you've gone in with the idea, which is, definitely something I agree with, the nature element, the talking element, the community element. But what's something that's maybe that you've learned yourself through doing this at these campfire chats?
I think how much it's needed. Genuinely, just like I thought I knew it was sort of needed, and I thought everybody was like I thought there would be a few people that would need it. You know what I mean? But I've got that it's like it's everybody. You know what I mean? Like everybody that has come down there has been capped instantly. Oh, this is brilliant. this is amazing, like this, and like they've sat on it. Oh, I didn't realize how much I needed this, like, and everybody's like, when can we come back? When are you going to do it again? And everybody has got out of there going, oh, I feel loads better. Like they're tired, they're dirty, they smell like smoke. And not all of this is like veterans. It's a lot of, I ride motorbikes, so get a lot of bikers down there, civilians, people who haven't camped before, and you get everybody comes out of there feeling filthy, tired, but refreshed. And even if it's something they didn't realise they do, I think everybody is just desperate for some actual human connection and a chance to sort of chat. Yeah.
And where can people find out more about this, mate?
So at the minute, we're just on Facebook, the Campfire Collective. That is going to change shortly. As I say, I'm still going through my recovery and my fight with Veterans UK. So we've been slow to start, but we're getting a website up soon. So keep an eye on Facebook, and we'll put up stuff there. Please feel free to connect with us on there and give me a shout. I'm on social media as Shed Heron. So just get your shout on there. Yeah, that's a nickname I picked up because you can't see me if you're listening to this, but I look like a Temu Ed Sheeran.
I did wonder who who popped up in the studio anyway, because you were at the kind of chair turned around as well. But yeah.
Oh no, that was from when I was on the 299 course. We were in as a Remembrance Sunday. We were all stood around in our number twos, and this old boy made a beeline for us, and we thought, oh, here we go, like back in my day stories. And he was like a bit pissed, and he just came up to me and went, "You look like that Shed Heron," and then walked off. And that was it. Really, I just picked up a nickname.
Brilliant. I'll put links down to your page down in the show notes and stuff. But mate, we're going to wrap up in a second. I think we're both probably going to follow a bit of our own advice today and get outside. This is a beautiful day awaiting us. But before we go, floor is yours. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave people with?
No, have a look at Emerald Clinic. Cannabis is available to you if you are a veteran. If you're not a veteran, give it a think. Think about it. It's a viable medicinal option. Have a read about the endocannabinoid system, and have a look for that divine spark in you and get outside. Have a meditate. Have a good day.
Jonny, thanks so much for your time today, mate. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.